Brace yourself. Get it passed up anytime now. Collect yourself. Things will never be the same in this sad world. Around a lot of bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million missing pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So sit back in your hole.
Good morning, everybody. Good to be with you today. We are continuing our exploration of the origins of the spooky, mysterious wizard Merlin. Last time we saw that Merlin was created by demons. Their goal was to make something like an antichrist, to make a super-powered being who could serve the powers of darkness. And to do that, it was a whole convoluted story where they ruined an entire family in order to drive one surviving member of that family to despair and desperation. But at the end of the day, what happened is an incubus demon came to this woman at night while she was asleep and slept with her and impregnated her. And so the demon's plan somewhat backfired, or really did backfire, because the child was born with all these demonic powers, but he was not born evil, because the woman didn't consent to what was done to her, so she could not be found at fault for it. But people don't know that, right? If somebody comes to you with a story like that, oh well, I just woke up pregnant. I don't know how it happened. We're probably not likely to believe that. And this text is being written in the 1200s. A quick note. So what's happening is this woman is being put on trial for her life for having a child out of wedlock. How often did that really happen in the Middle Ages? Did they really kill women for being pregnant outside of marriage in medieval England, medieval Europe? The answer is not never, but almost never. And almost certainly an unmarried woman wouldn't be put to death for having a child out of wedlock. She'd be shamed. You wouldn't want to live her life. But you got to think, people in charge of society are all guys, and it takes two to tango. So even though even though there's a double standard there, guys in power don't tend to kill the women that will sleep with them. So was it possible to be executed for adultery? Sure. Did it really happen? Not much at all. Okay, so let me have up to the front our narratrix, Rat Maggot. And I'm going to have Caleb be the judge today, Tyler be the child Merlin today, and Angelica is the judge's mom. So let me have all of you here. And begin when you're ready.
Okay. The day arrived for the mother's trial. The women of the town all accused her of having illicit sex and making up the absurd story. Then Merlin leapt forward, incensed by their words, to his mother and said,
"She'll not be burnt so soon. If all men and women who committed adultery were put to death, more than a couple of the people here would be burnt. For I know the ways of these women as well as they do themselves. If I were to speak of them, I'd make them confess and admit the truth in front of this whole assembly. There are some who have done worse than my mother. She's not guilty of the charges made, and if she is, this good man has taken upon them himself. And if you don't believe me, ask him yourselves."
This doesn't acquit her on its own. She must tell us who begat you.
I know my father better than you ever knew yours, and your mother knows who fathered you better than mine knows who fathered me.
Merlin, If you knew something about my mother, you've a duty to tell me.
I can't say for sure that your mother deserves death more than mine, and if I make her admit it, then acquit my mother, who is innocent of the charges you've laid upon her, for be assured that she's said about me is true.
So just
happening?
Real quick. So Merlin's mother is on trial for her life. And Merlin is standing, this little child Merlin is standing to defend his mother. And Merlin's prime argument in defense of his mother is to turn to the judge and say, your mother's a whore.
The judge was incensed by this and said,
Oh my goodness. I know. If you're right, you'll have saved your mother from the fire. But I tell you this, if what you've said about my mother is false, yours will certainly burn.
They adjourned for 15 days, while the judge sent for his own mother and put Merlin and his mother under close guard. Indeed, he stayed with the guards himself. The child was often encouraged to speak by his mother and by others, but they could not get a word from him. The appointed day came, and the judge appeared with his mother, and Merlin and his mother. And Merlin and his mother were taken from prison and led before the people. The judge said to Merlin,
Here is my mother, about whom you must speak.
This is not wise. Go, and take her to a house in private and summon your closest counselors. I shall summon my mothers, God omnipotent and her confessor.
Those who heard his words were almost speechless with astonishment, but the judge knew that what he said was wise. And Merlin said to the other judges,
If I can deliver my mother from this man, will she be acquitted?
If she escapes his condemnation, nothing more will be asked of her.
So they retired to a chamber, the judge taking with him his mother and two of the worthiest friends he could find, while Merlin took his mother's confessor. When they were all assembled, the judge said,
Merlin, now you may say what you wish to my mother, to earn your mother's acquittal.
I've no desire to defend my mother if she's done wrong, but I wish to protect God's truth and hers. Be assured she's not deserved the torment you intend for her, and if you'll take my advice, you'll acquit my mother and cease to inquire about your own.
You're not going to wiggle around me like this. You'll have to say more.
You've taken my mother, and intend to burn her for giving birth to me without knowing who begat me. But I know who fathered me better than you know who fathered you, and your mother could say whose son you are better than my mother could say whose son I am.
Am I not the son of your lawful husband?
Oh God, dear son, whose son will you be if not your good father long dead?
Lady, you must tell the truth if your son is to acquit my mother and me. I dearly wish he'd do so now, without more being said.
I most certainly will not.
All you'll achieve by making your mother testify is to find out that your father's still alive.
Everyone present was astounded by this, and the child turned to the judge's mother and said,
What the freak? Oh. Lady, you must tell your son the truth.
The lady crossed herself and cried,
Devil Satan, haven't I done so?
You know very well that he's not the son of the man he thinks.
The lady was appalled.
Who is he then?
You know that he's your priest's son. By way of proof, the first time that you have conjoined with him, you told him you were afraid of becoming pregnant, and he said you wouldn't be so on his account, and that he'd make a note of all the times when he lay with you, because he, for his part, was afraid that you'd lie with another man. For at the time you were on bad terms with your husband, and when your son was conceived, you weren't slow on lamenting your misfortune, being with child by him. If I'm telling the truth, admit it. If you won't, I'll reveal more.
Is this true?
Do you believe him, demon?
If you won't admit it, then I'll tell you something else which you know to be true. There's no point in hiding it, for everything done is known to me. The truth is that when you knew that you were pregnant, you sought to make peace with your husband, so that he wouldn't realize the child was not his. The priest arranged your reconciliation and encouraged you to lie together once more, and so made your worthy husband imagine it was his child, as did everyone else. Your son himself was sure of it. You've lived this lie ever since and do so still. Indeed, the night before you left to come here, you and the priest lied together, and when you set out in the morning, he accompanied you a good part of the way, and said, "My dear, make sure you do and say all my son wants to hear," for he knew he was his son for the notes he'd kept.
When the judge's mother heard these words, which she knew to be entirely true, she sat down, devastated. She knew now that she had to tell the truth, and the judge looked at her and said,
Dear mother, whoever your lover may have been, I am still your son, and as such I want you to tell me the truth. Are the child's words true?
My dear God, have mercy on me. Yes, I can't hide it. It is all true, every word.
The judge turned pale.
This child is wise indeed, saying he knew his father better than I knew mine. It would be wrong to put his mother to death without doing the same to my own, in the name of God and love. And so that I may clear myself of blame in the eyes of these people, tell me who is your father.
I will do so, but it may not be to your advantage. I would have you know that I am the son of a devil who deceived my mother. He was one of a kind of demon called Hecubides, who inhabit the air, and he bequeathed me the power and intelligence to know everything that has been said and done. That's how I know all about the life your mother has led. And our Lord has granted me the knowledge of things to come, as you'll see by what I'm about to tell you. Come aside with me. Your mother will now go to the man who fathered you and tell him everything I've said, and when he hears that you know the truth, his heart will be overcome by terror. He'll flee in fear of you, and the devil, whose ways he's always followed so long, will lead him to a river where he'll drown himself. You can use this to judge whether I have knowledge of the future.
Right. Thank you. What the hell? Thank you. And so what Merlin predicts does happen. The priest ends up drowning himself. There's another incident in here, and if you, by the way, if you're interested in this, I do have a folder on Schoology in the materials page called Full Text. You can read all of Robert de Boron's Merlin in there if you want. But Kid Merlin is walking down the street, and he starts laughing. And I forget who's walking with him, but the person walking with him is like, "Why are you laughing?" He's like, "Well, you see that guy over there?" And there's, "Yeah. Well, that guy over there, he just came from the cobbler, the guy who makes shoes. And he's all upset because he thinks the guy cheated him and didn't use enough leather in his shoes. But what he doesn't know is he's going to die today. And so he shouldn't be worried about his shoes." And then the guy drops dead right after that. Merlin is Merlin plays a role in Arthurian legend. I'm not suggesting that the character is connected to these characters, but he plays a role similar to Loki in Norse mythology and to Odysseus in Greek mythology, and that's the role of the trickster. Right? He's not evil. Merlin's more good than evil, but he's always up to something, and he's rarely letting you in on the joke until you realize that the joke is about you. He speaks in riddles. He's playful. He's almost like, King, could you turn the TV on for me? We were just talking about Star Wars a few minutes ago, and so I'm old enough that I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater when it came out in '83. And if any of you were Star Wars fans where you remember Return of the Jedi and the way Yoda is portrayed in Return of the Jedi before he reveals who he is, that's also very much a Merlin type of figure. Merlin straddles. He walks a line between two worlds. The Merlin figure is certainly a Christian figure in all of this literature, but he straddles the line between the old ways of the Celts, the old Druidic ways, and Rat Maggot's going to teach us more about Celtic mythology, and Christianity. So young Merlin has two masters, two elder figures that he looks up to. One of them is a Christian monk known as Saint Blaise. Both of these are real historical figures, by the way. And the other is, the Druids are gone by this time, but the other is a Celtic bard. The bards are the wandering poets and singers. And after Britain and Ireland convert to Christianity, the bards sort of inherit some of the old roles of the Druids. And the bard Taliesin is Merlin's mentor in the older, more Druidic ways. Rat Maggot will do most of the teaching about Celtic mythology, but I want to give you just a bare bones account of one element of Celtic mythology, because it's important to understand who Merlin is and much of what goes on in the Arthurian story. So, from a Celtic perspective, if you're trying to get to what they call the other world, so the spiritual realm, the realm of gods and spirits and demons and magic and mystery, it's not exactly up there, though you might reach it by climbing. And it's not exactly down under the ground, though you might reach it by falling in a hole. The Celtic otherworld is right here. It's like, they don't use this term, but it's like another dimension. It lays right on top of our world, unseen, unfelt, unexperienced. Except for in marginal places, liminal places, boundary lines. So you might access the other world by going over a far distant hill, or entering a cave, or sailing out beyond where known land is. And if you fall into it by accident, you might be in real trouble, right? If you fall into the other world by accident, you might spend an afternoon in the other world and come back to find that 500 years have passed in our world and that everyone you love has been dead for 450 of those years. Or you might spend 100 years in the other world and come back to find that only 5 minutes have passed, but your family don't recognize you because now you are an old man or an old woman. Or an old woman. Time and space don't function the same way in the other world as they do in our realm. And we'll see that the entrances to the other world shift. So the fact that you were able to get to the other world by... Remember a few years ago, this is not something I was into, but students pointed out to me, it was kind of cool. Remember a few years ago, maybe they still do it, did people still watch videos about the, what was it called? Backrooms. The backrooms. Remember the backrooms? Yeah. The backrooms are very otherworldly. You go into these liminal spaces and all of a sudden you're transported into another dimension. You'll find sometimes in the Arthurian stories when you'll see people are looking for, they're on quests for things. And you'll say, wait a minute. We already know exactly where this place is. We know where this castle is. Why can't they find it? Because it's not always there. Right? Because the other world doesn't behave the way we do. The origin we got for Merlin in Robert de Boron's Merlin pretty much becomes the official story from this point forward. But because Merlin, like his master Taliesin, these bards have inherited from the older druids the ability to travel back and forth between the other world intentionally and to sort of master some of the power of the other world, which means all bets are off. So somebody who's not me, get that? Because I'm the only one doing anything. Which means all bets are off. Merlin's born, we're not told exactly when the story takes place. He's born at a certain time, but there's no way of knowing that he's not already 10,000 years old the moment that he's born. He he switches back and forth between child and adult and old man, and he shape shifts. And I want to give you a taste for how mysterious the figure Merlin is. It's the last part of the reading of the PDF. So this is an old Welsh poem, and the poem's not exactly about Merlin, it's about his master, Taliesin. But it gives you a feel for what the Celtic people, even the Christianized Celtic people, thought about the power of their bards. Primary chief bard am I to the king, and my original country is the region of summer stars. Idno and Hanan called me Merlin. Who's Merlin? Merlin is actually his historical name. Wait a minute. Taliesin is Merlin's master and teacher, and yet in this poem anyway, they're also the same dude. Why? Because when you deal with the people with the power to traverse the other world, all bets are off. At length every king will call me Taliesin. I was with the Lord in the highest sphere on the fall of Lucifer into the depth of hell. So that's a part of Christian story that happens before the creation of the universe. And Taliesin said, I was there. I saw that happen. I have borne a banner before Alexander. I know the names of the stars from north to south. I have been on the galaxy at the throne of the distributor. I was in Canaan when Absalom was slain. Remember Absalom, right? Absalom, my son, my son. I conveyed the divine spirit to the level of the vale of Hebron. I was in the court of Dan before the birth of Gwydion. I was instructor to Eli and Enoch. Eli was a Jewish priest from the generation before King David. And Enoch is a figure from very early in Genesis. He's in like the 6th or 7th generation of people. We had to cut the lesson out, but he's a figure that also appears in Sumerian mythology, in the Sumerian king list, what the Bible says about him is, and Enoch lived for 365 years, and he walked with God, and then he was no more because God took him. So Enoch is this figure who's been assumed body and soul into heaven toward the beginning of time. I have been winged by the genius of the splendid crozier. I have been loquacious. Loquacious is you talk a lot. Anyone know anyone like that? Hey, shut it. Quit being loquacious. I have been loquacious prior to being gifted with speech. I was at the palace of the crucifixion of the merciful Son of... I was at the place of the crucifixion of the merciful Son of God. I have been 3 periods in the prison of Arianrod. Arianrod is a Celtic mythical prison that's located in the underworld, or the other world. I have been the chief director of the work of the Tower of Nimrod. I am a wonder whose origin is not known. I have been in Asia with Noah in the ark. I have seen the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. I have been in India when Roma was built. I don't know why you'd want to point out that when Rome was being built, you were in India, but he was. I am now come here to the remnants of Troya. Remember, the British believed that they were founded by Brutus, the grandson of Aeneas of Troy. I have been with the Lord in the manger of the ass. I strengthened Moses through the water of Jordan. I have been in the firmament with Mary Magdalene. I have obtained the muse from the cauldron of Ceridwen. I have been bard of the harp to Leon of Lachlan. These are all Welsh mythical figures. I've been on the White Hill in the court of... been practicing since the summer, but Welsh is a very difficult language to pronounce, that's all. Coinvaline, for a day and a year in stocks and fetters. I have suffered hunger for the Son of the Virgin. I have been fostered in the land of the deity. I have been teacher to all intelligences. I am able to instruct the whole universe. I should put that on my name tag. I shall be until the day of doom on the face of the earth, and it is not known whether my body is flesh or fish. Then I was for 9 months in the womb of the hag Ceridwen. I was originally little Gwion. At length I am Taliesin. So these bardic figures are figures of great power, great mystery, and none of the rules apply to them as far as time and space and human limitation. Okay, so that's our introduction to Merlin. We'll jump back into our story in progress tomorrow, where we left off. Remember, in the story, slimy Vortigern had overthrown and burned alive. So now it is time for the rightful ruling family of Britain. So the brothers Aurelius Ambrosius and Uther Pendragon to return and take their rightful throne. That all happens tomorrow. That's all I need from you for today. Rest of the time is yours.
Walk around a lot a bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million missing pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So slip back in your hole, or get back in your cave. If I'm going down, I'm taking someone with me.